basically what I would like to be able to do is to hire someone and be like, all right, Bhav, you're hired, go make me some money. Like this is how he describes it. And he says that you can't really do that because if you could clone yourself, the clone of you would be doing their own thing. They wouldn't be working for you.
Hey guys, welcome back to Creators Campfire, and in this episode I sat down with Ali Abdaal. The last time I spoke to Ali on this podcast, we talked about getting started on YouTube. Since then, Ali has gone on to launch his part-time YouTuber Academy, a 6-week live cohort where he's distilled all the information he knows about YouTube into a course to help other students grow their channel. He's also expanded his team from 4 to almost 20 people in that time and turned his part-time YouTube gig into a full-time multi-million-dollar business. We spoke about why he felt the need to grow, what that growth looked like for him, and what he would have done differently along the way. Enjoy. What was your motivation to kind of expand outside of YouTube in the first place?
Yeah, I think mostly risk aversion and fear, because it's all very well having a YouTube channel that makes decent money, but it's a bit risky. It's like building a house on borrowed land, people often say, where, you know, I'd be at the whim of the algorithm, and it's just not a very smart business thing to be entirely reliant on one source of revenue. Similar to my spiel about like how having a job means you're reliant on a single stream of income. And that's fine. A lot of people do it. In fact, most people probably do it. But if you're interested in kind of financial independence and stability in that sense, it makes sense to have multiple income sources. Equally, as a business, it makes sense to not be so reliant on a single income stream from YouTube and instead diversify to other revenue streams.
That makes sense, because I guess you would have had multiple sources of income within YouTube, but it would still be very heavily reliant on YouTube itself and the platform, right? In terms of affiliate links, sponsorships, and AdSense, they are multiple streams of income, but still all YouTube related, and therefore this allows you to expand.
Yeah, exactly. And like the thought process was initially it was like, oh crap, we're too much of the revenue is reliant on sponsors. Let's expand. And then Skillshare happened, thanks to Thomas Frank and Francesco as advice. And then Skillshare ended up becoming the biggest source of revenue. And I was like, okay, cool. Skillshare is now too big a source of revenue. Therefore, let's diversify further. And that was when the thought of having our own sort of self-hosted online course came about. And that was going to be what the Part-Time YouTuber Academy became. But then I had a Zoom call with Tiago Forte and David Perel, who run Building Second Brain and Rite of Passage, as you know. And they basically talked me into doing it as a live cohort. And then that was what made the Part-Time YouTuber Academy happen. And now that is now the biggest source of revenue. So it's like, damn, okay, we need to diversify more. And so at each stage, it's like a case of, okay, let's build the foundation around the stream that we have to make it more stable and to grow it, while at the same time adding in another source of income so that the business overall is not so reliant on each individual stream.
Do you have like a mental threshold in your, like you said, Skillshare got too big, PTY got too big. What in your mind is too big? Is it a number, or is it kind of just the weighting within the business?
Yeah, it's probably just a percentage, really. Yeah. So right now, the YouTuber Academy is probably like 70% of our revenue. 70%? Yeah, something like that. But that feels too big. I would be more comfortable if it was like 20 or 30%.
Okay, makes sense. So I guess, again, when we spoke last time, I think there was only 4 of you in the business. Since then, you've obviously more than doubled the team. How has that kind of gone as a journey? So how did you know that it was time to bring in more people? How did you know what you wanted them to do? And how has that kind of grown over the last year?
Yeah, I feel like I don't really have a good process for this. It all sort of happened fairly organically, where this time last year there were 4 of us, well, 3.5 of us. There was like, well, it depends how you count people. So Christian and Angus were full-time. So Christian, editor, and Angus was at the time still doing writer type stuff, but ended up taking more of a sort of becoming my right-hand man fairly organically. We had Elizabeth, who was like my part-time personal assistant, officially meant to be working 1 day a week, but actually ending up doing like 2 or 3 alongside her medical school thing. And I think if it was this time last year that we spoke, I would have just quit my job as a doctor, and therefore I then went full-time on the YouTube stuff. And so that was what it was. But then I was like, okay, we probably need some more writers, because writing was a bottleneck. In that we had all these ideas, but they needed to be developed and researched, and I wanted to do all these fancy videos that required lots of research and case studies and things, and that needed writers. So then we hired we were intended to hire a single writer, but we ended up bringing two on, Gareth and Jakob. And then because of the way the team works, and people just sort of end up doing different things. And so Gareth ended up doing loads of core stuff. Jakob ended up doing loads of marketing stuff because that was his experience. And then it was like, okay, cool. Now we need to probably bring some more people on. Then YouTuber Academy became big. And then Elizabeth started becoming an actual YouTuber and sort of having more value to the YouTube Academy than she did answering my emails at 2:00 in the morning. And so then the next thing was like, okay, cool. We need another assistant who is not a YouTuber, preferably. And then so Dan came on. And then at some point, we ended up getting an external editor, sort of an extra assistant editor, who's also called Christian, that Christian knew. And then at some point, you came on as our operations manager for the YouTuber Academy. And then we got Amber, who came on as a podcast producer because we were like, we should start a podcast. So it's like, there's no real plan. It's just like every few weeks to months, when I sit down, usually with Angus, and think, what are the bottlenecks? What are the holes in the business right now? We end up thinking, oh yeah, we actually need a bunch more people. Let's hire a bunch more people. So last time we did this was a few months ago, and we realized there were about 8 holes in the business, and Angus was like filling 6 of those. So we were like, all right, let's hire a bunch more people. And so this week we're giving offers out to like 6 people, and hopefully another few next week.
Okay, that's cool. I guess coming out of that is there are lots of people who might go into it thinking, I need to know exactly where I need to be or what the direction is before they hire. And they're very concerned, potentially even about their first hire, which I want to ask you about. But I like the way that you kind of approach it of, we'll take what we need now and we'll kind of deal with the other stuff later, and we'll deal with it as it comes, rather than actually, this is where I want to be and therefore I need to go and get X, Y, and Z right now. Otherwise, I'm not going to move forward.
I mean, I'm not sure this is the right way of going about it. Like, you know, there are multiple ways to skin a cat, but certainly the traditional advice on hiring is figure out what you need and then hire for it, rather than hire people and then make it up as you go along. So the way we're doing it, I think, is unorthodox, and the only reason probably it seems like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. You guys are a startup, you know, fast moving and all that stuff, is because it worked. Like, I think if the business had declined, it would have been like, okay, well, we made a really big mistake when it came to hiring and didn't know what we wanted before we hired people. But because it's the way I think of it is that the business is kind of failing forwards. Like, there's all this shit happening behind the scenes where it's being held together with duct tape and twine or whatever the phrase is. But it's looking from the outside that, oh, things are growing. The YouTube channel is growing. We hit 2 million subscribers. Yay, we're running another cohort. But there's all these like simmering issues, which are all mostly down to the fact that I don't know how to lead and manage people. And so I'm making it up as I go along. No one in the team knows how to lead and manage people. They're also making it up as they go along. So it's all kind of fun. But it's probably not the path I would recommend.
Okay. If you were to do it over then, looking back, what would you do differently?
I'm not sure I would have done anything differently. I think that's all we could have done given the information that we had. I think probably having a clearer idea of exactly what people would do when they join the team. So it's only in the last few weeks that we started actually getting job contracts and a list of roles and responsibilities. And I guess for me as the business owner, I have in my head a model of what I think you do because you're part of the team now. But I actually don't know what you do. And so if I asked you, if someone asked me what does BHAV do, and then I asked you, BHAV, what do you do? Those answers would probably be slightly different. And if I were to ask you, BHAV, what does like amazing in your role look like? And then someone asked me, what does amazing in BHAV's role look like? Those would probably be different answers as well. And that's really bad. Like, it's really bad to have that such lack of clarity that you think you're doing a job and think good in that job is different to what I think you're doing and what I think good is at the thing. So I think just much more clarity on exactly what I want, what success looks like, what exceptional performance in a role looks like, and just being open and transparent about that rather than thinking people are going to read my mind.
That's a very good point. We probably should talk. Yes. Okay, cool. I want to come back to kind of your first hire, because again, I think like one of the things on PTYA that you promote is to outsource as much as you can, as early as you can, probably starting with an editor. And a lot of people struggle with, passing over their work or actually handing it off and making that first hire. And I think it's the same probably for any role. I've spoken to a few people that have the same issue with a PA. They're like, I need a PA, but it's a bit either scary whether they say it or not to make that first hire. What was that like for you and how did you approach that?
Yeah, so when it came to outsource editing, I started with a freelance editor. There was a friend of mine who was a mentor, who became a mentor and is now officially a business coach, who suggested that it sounds like you're spending 20 hours a week editing. Sounds like you need to outsource editing. And I was like, oh, but I tried finding someone from the Philippines and like they didn't really work out. And he was like, dude, you can't pay $5 an hour for an editor. You need to pay proper money for a proper editor. So find someone. And so I found a freelancer who was charging £25 an hour, which was like a lot more than I was making as a doctor. And so I was like, oh my God, this is a lot of money. But then I reasoned that if this guy is spending 4 to 6 hours on a video and it's saving me 4 to 6 hours, like my time is more valuable to the business than £25 an hour. Because even if I used that time to write one extra video and a sponsorship was getting us, I don't know, $1,000 at the time, that's like 20 videos worth of stuff-ish, if my math is wrong there. But so it started off as going for a freelancer. And then a few months later, the same mentor, he and I grabbed breakfast, and he said, with the revenue you've got, it sounds like it's time to hire a full-time employee. And I was like, whoa, full-time employee? What the hell? There's not enough stuff to do full-time. And he said, you think that right now, but like, trust me, there is, and you'll realize it once you have someone on payroll, and then you'll find things for them to do. And that was exactly what happened.
Yes, I think that is very much a thing. And I think people do that. They're like, oh, but I can do everything myself as well, and it's all working. And then suddenly they do bring someone on and they pass over the work, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, they're doing way more stuff than I could have done, and that was actually very worthwhile. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. So I guess, again, if we go back to like the last year, so you have your YouTube channel, you then branched out into a Skillshare course, and then launched PTYA, the Part-Time YouTuber Academy. And I believe you were still doing Not Overthinking, the podcast. Since then, you have decided to also write a book, and you've just launched another podcast.
Yes.
How... You might answer this question with diversification, but what are the reasons for kind of branching off into those things? Are they something that you've always wanted to do, or are they purely just, hey, this is another kind of way to go?
I was discussing this with my brother in the car yesterday, and I asked him, Tamor, what the hell do I want to do with my life? And he thought about it, and he was like, I think the problem right now is that you're very opportunistic in your decision making, and I mean, he said that fine. So starting the YouTube channel wasn't really opportunistic. Like you know, that was a big step and something that I decided to do of my own back. I still think it was somewhat opportunistic because it was content marketing for my original business, 6med, which helped people get into med school. But anyway, but from starting the YouTube channel, there's never really been a plan, and at every stage, it's been a case of, oh, this new opportunity has come up. Let's go for it. Oh, people are saying make productivity content. Okay. People are saying, how do you use your iPad? Okay. Oh, wow, that video's gone viral. Okay, cool. Interesting. Oh, I've just spoken to Thomas Frank and Francesco from Keep Productive, and they both recommended Skillshare. Oh, okay. Let's try that. Oh, hang on. This is making a lot of money. Let's do more of this. Okay, cool. I guess we should probably do our own course. Okay, cool. Let's do one that teaches people YouTube. You know what? Let me just happen to have a Zoom call with some people I know through Twitter who are convincing me to do a live cohort. Okay, cool. And it's been a sort of opportunities come up as the journey progresses. And I've just sort of seized some of those opportunities and let others go. The book was an opportunistic thing where an editor emailed me and said, hey, I'm an editor at Penguin. Do you want to write a book? I was like, hell yes. Seems like a fun thing to do. Seems like it would be good for the business. The thought process there was that, given that I want to be a sort of Tim Ferriss-esque professional thought leader, public intellectual type figure, writing a book is a pretty logical step in the playbook of being a sort of public intellectual. I say kind of cringing as I say it, but it's all just banter. So book was an opportunistic thing. Podcast as well. It's like, again, it's just following the playbook. Like people have done this sort of thing before. Tim Ferriss, for example, big inspiration, obviously. Initially, it was all about him for our work week, for our chef, for our body, where he is doing all the work and doing all the writing. And then he started his podcast like circa 2014. And now all of a sudden it becomes not about him, but it becomes about showcasing the expertise of other people. And then his brand like grew even bigger off the back of that. Similarly, Tom Bilyeu, Impact Theory, Lewis Ho's School of Greatness, Lex Friedman, these interview type podcasts. Having an interview podcast where you bring other people on really gives like your content longevity, because there's only so much that I can peddle productivity and study tips. But now that I've got the ability to interview other people, especially now that I have a platform where I can say to someone, "Hey, I'm kind of a big deal. I've got lots of subscribers. Do you famous successful person want to come and talk to me about stuff for 2 hours?" They're more likely to say yes than if I were just starting out on YouTube and wouldn't really have access to these sorts of people. So in a way, the podcast is also an opportunistic thing where it's like thinking about long term, how do we give our content longevity, and how do we use the fact that we have an audience to access people that we couldn't otherwise access before? So that's the decision making. There's no grand plan.
So kind of want to take it back a step. With YouTube, there are lots of YouTubers that have millions of subscribers and are purely just doing the YouTube thing, whether they want to expand or not. You have obviously expanded and made that into your own business. What do you think sets you apart versus them?
I suspect it's that I started my career as like business first rather than creator first. And so from the age of like 12 onwards, I've been trying to make sort of internet businesses every year, and most of them failed. Then when I was in my second year of university, I started a business called SixMed, which ended up doing quite well, helping people get into med school. And so I sort of came into YouTube, I want to say from a business background, but that sounds too pretentious. Basically, I was a kid who tried starting businesses. And I think then YouTube is like, oh, wow, this ties in really nicely. Like YouTube is effectively a marketing channel for businesses. But the nice thing about YouTube is that it itself makes money through AdSense, sponsorships, and affiliates. And so YouTube is this interesting engine where you could view it as a business in its own right, and certainly lots of YouTubers do. Or you could view it as a marketing device for downstream businesses, which also lots of YouTubers do. Or you can view it as both. And I like to view it as both.
If YouTube didn't have the money-making potential that it did, or they suddenly cut off, all the monetization, would you still want to be a YouTuber?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
It's a fantastic marketing driver for other things.
Okay. Okay. No, that's fair. Okay. In terms of where you want to take the business now that you have these kind of things, and I realize you say you don't necessarily have a grand plan or anything, but do you have an idea of maybe where you want to be in the next 12 months or even 3 years? Is that something you think of, or is that something you kind of have an idea of?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that today, because literally tomorrow we have like a whole day session with a business coach who is helping us try to figure this out. When like plan out what's the vision of the business and where are we going to be in 3 years' time and where are we going to be 12 months from now. Broadly in my head, I have this idea that I want to have the same impact on people that Tim Ferriss had on me. And that means like breadth of impact, like across a broad range of disciplines, but also depth of impact. Like, for example, reading the 4 Hour Workweek probably changed the trajectory of my life, because it hit me at the perfect point in time where I moved from going down the medicine / tech route in a bit to more going down the let me build businesses at university route. That's pretty cool. So I'd like to have that kind of effect on people. That is the extent of the grand plan. I think partly I also don't like plans because, my model for this is fairly in line with what the Basecamp people say, what Derek Sivers say, which is that, are you helping people? Are you having a good time? Are you profitable? Isn't that enough? And so in a way, what I'm trying to do is play the infinite game of, as long as I'm having fun and helping people and making enough money to sustain me and the team, really, who cares about plans and like, oh, I want to hit the New York Times bestseller list, or I want to, I don't know, get Elon Musk as a guest. Like, I don't really care about these sorts of milestone-y type things. And I certainly don't have any dreams that, I want to have a 100-person business or a 200-person business. So I don't really think in those terms. I think in terms of how do I have fun each day while also hopefully helping people while remaining profitable.
Just going back to diversification for a second, do you think there's a thing of too much diversification?
Yeah, I mean, the more things you diversify into, the more like, the people say that then your business lacks focus. Gary Keller wrote a book called The One Thing, which is about what is the one thing that like your business does or whatever. A lot of, I think core focus is what like the entrepreneurial operating system calls it. Like a lot of people say you should focus on doing one thing and doing one thing really well. I think in the field that we're in, the one thing that hopefully we can do really well is create inspiring and educational content. And there are multiple ways of doing that, like YouTube videos, podcasts, courses, books. Physical products to an extent are like an offshoot of that. And so when people approach me and say, do you want to make a physical product? I'm always like, I kind of do if it seems cool. Like I've always wanted to make my own stationery, so we're going to make our own stationery. But it's not really part of the core focus of the business, which is to create inspiring and educational content. So I think there is a risk of too much diversification. But again, if you're having fun and making money and helping people, who cares?
So I guess when those opportunities come up, that's your kind of guiding light, guiding star of does this align with kind of my core brand or value of this business?
Yeah, for example, with our YouTuber Academy, one direction we could go in is sell services to corporations who want to do better on YouTube and social media and become like a, I don't know, social media consulting / whatever platform. That seems like the worst thing in the world for me because I actually don't give a toss about that kind of stuff. All I want to do is teach people at scale. And, providing services to corporations is not teaching people at scale. All right, Bob, what do you think we should do in the business? You've been in the team for a few months now.
I think personally that the PTYA side could branch into a PT side, so a part-time side or whatever you want to call it. But I think that side of the business in itself is its own kind of branch, and that has, to me, a lot of potential to grow into its own educational service. So it doesn't have to be YouTuber only, but there's a lot of scope for people these days want to do whatever side hustle they want to. And it's not a hustle culture thing. It's just people have realized that you don't have to do the 9-to-5 corporate thing, right? There are potential other options out there, whether you want to do it full-time or part-time or whatever, and doing it part-time gives you that chance. So along with YouTube, there could be things like a podcasting course or an editing only course. I realize you have your Skillshare one, but those kind of things, and whether you bring on other creators to fall under that arm or your kind of strategy, and that becomes your platform, and they could then, host their courses under that arm of things. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. For the other side, I think you've, personally, from what I see on the inside in, and I'm not as involved, I think you've kind of got it nailed. So there's a YouTube channel that is doing very well. There's a second YouTube channel. There's 2 podcasts and a book coming up. So I don't really know, in terms of diversification, where else this could lead. So that's kind of my insight, which I realize is one-sided. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I wonder about that whole... So this is basically what NAS Academy is. NAS Daily, big YouTube channel, big Facebook page. They've got their own NAS Academy. Had a call with them just now, actually, where they build as like masterclass for creators. And so Dan Mace did a course called How to Be an Effing Great Filmmaker. They've got a bunch of other creators who are doing courses on editing, courses on all sorts of creatory type stuff. So that's a pretty good model. But also I was thinking, do I really care about doing that kind of model? It's like, not really. I don't really want to build my own platform. Like, certainly building a platform has more potential for scale. But if I think, what are the things I actually care about? I would rather teach the courses myself. I'm basically just a big attention seeker. And I want to do the bulk of the teaching.
Okay. So how would you feel about... Well, that's fine. Yeah. It's clearly got you to this point, so it's working. How do you feel, though, about self-hosted versus live? So obviously you've got Skillshare courses that come out. There's potentially more courses in the works that sound like they are self-paced courses versus PTYA, which is very much a live cohort. So what are your thoughts on each of those, and how do you decide what's going to be a live course versus just self-paced?
I don't really want to do another live course. Live is a lot of work. I get that for a lot of people, live makes sense. Like, I think it's a question of, it's like content versus community. Because in a live course, yes, you've got the content, but really, any content you would expect to get in any kind of course is all available on the internet for free anyway. And certainly it's the same for ours. We kind of put it all in one place together and stuff. But for example, a part-time YouTuber Academy could be a self-paced course with just a bunch of video recordings, like a standard, they call them MOOCs. I don't know what it stands for, but like whatever online course. Like a standard self-paced online course, you just watch a bunch of videos like a Skillshare class. It could be that. The nice thing about it being live and being cohort-based is that you get much more of a community thing. And so I liken it, it's like equivalent to, do you hire a personal trainer or do you just go to the gym and follow a workout plan? I personally suck at motivating myself to work out. Therefore, I have a personal trainer. And it costs money. And only it's only people with money who get personal trainers, because everyone else would be like, why the hell would you pay 50 quid an hour or whatever it is to get someone to tell you what to do? Just do it yourself, man. I'm like, okay, yeah. And so really, I think cohorts are aimed at people who are resource rich but time poor, I suspect. So people who have real jobs that are making real money, but also who don't have time/motivation on their hands to do a thing like start a YouTube channel. And so when you have a community kind of taking you through it and holding your hand and like giving you feedback along the way, it makes you more likely to do it. But it's also a lot of work to run behind the scenes. So I kind of see Part-Time YouTuber Academy as like, for now, I see it as being our only live course. I would be open to doing more, but I prefer the model of record it once and then let the internet automate it, rather than do it live each time, even though that's quite fun.
Okay. So you still want to be the face of it, but you do prefer the self-paced. So you still wouldn't necessarily want to go and become a platform to have others, because it still wants to be your work and your kind of course, but you don't necessarily want to do more live.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I'm not like averse to doing it at some point, but right now, when I think about what would it be like to have, I don't know, a bigger team and to have this platform and to get creators on board and to basically do what NAS Academy is doing or to do what like Masterclass are doing, it just seems like, this seems like not fun. Yes. Because ultimately, like teaching and reading and writing is my idea of fun. Managing the operations for like a platform is not my idea of fun.
That's totally understandable. You, I believe, very much follow the Gary Vee kind of philosophy of give as much free value as possible. And that's kind of what got you so far and got you all the subs. And like, that's what makes your content great, is that there's nothing you ever want to hold back. You always like, okay, this is everything I've got, and I'm happy to give you all of this. How did it feel to go from that kind of mindset to then go, here's a course and I'm going to charge you X for it? Like, was there a mindset shift that had to happen there?
Partly. It was a mindset shift around that, being okay with charging real money for stuff. Because I kind of shied away from that before, which is why I went down the Skillshare route rather than the actually charging people money for a course route. Because Skillshare it's like having something on Netflix. Like, people will either sign up for the free trial or they'll just have a subscription. So you're not really directly taking their money. So I had this real fear of selling. And in my mind, like, selling equals bad. And like sales equals bad and marketing equals bad. And I had to get over that. So that was a bit of a mindset shift. The way I also reasoned it was like, I think when it comes to cohort stuff, I was sold on the power of a cohort. And you can't run a cohort for free. Like, it does take money. And if you want a profitable business, you need to charge lots of money to have decent margins. And so the way I think of our cohorts is that they're aimed specifically at people with large amounts of money. We give out scholarships for people with less money, but they're aimed at those sorts of people. And in a way, the cohort funds the activities of the rest of the business, which is fully focused on giving like tons of free content to the world. It was also a change in mindset, which I got from Tiago and David, which was that they challenged me to think, like, I was saying, I couldn't charge any more than like $200 for this YouTuber course. Other people are doing it, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, okay, just as a thought experiment, if you had to charge $2,000 for the course, how would it change your approach to it? And I'd be like, oh my God, it would change it massively. Like, it wouldn't just be a case of sitting down and recording and forgetting about it. I'd be like fully involved in it. I'd be caring about every single student. And they were like, wouldn't that be a better experience for your students? I was like, yes, it would be. And they're like, so why don't you want to charge $2,000 for it? I was like, because it seems like a lot of money. And I think the way I used to think about my audience was that, I used to think that my audience was the people who commented on the videos, which broadly skew very young, because like adults tend not to comment on YouTube videos, and people with jobs tend not to comment on YouTube videos because it's like, why would you waste your time doing that? Whereas kids tend to comment on videos. And so my impression of the audience was skewed towards younger, i.e. more broke than what the audience actually is. And so I was so surprised when people started actually paying for this thing. It's a bunch of different mindset shifts there.
What kind of advice would you have for people that are looking to launch their first course and potentially are in the same situation that you were in?
Yeah, man, just do it and offer a money back guarantee. Offering a money back guarantee, I think, is like the ultimate hack, because it's like, if people don't like it, you literally just give them their money back. And if your course is bad, then you deserve it if everyone asks for their money back. Realistically, they probably won't, because it's actually probably going to be reasonably good. And even if you have a small cohort, you get to know people better. It's just more fun that way.
So one of the things that you have done with your videos is you've talked very openly about your income over the years. What was the kind of reasoning behind that? Because I think a lot of people are very quiet about that and don't necessarily want to release that. And I think it's become more of a trend now, but I think you were definitely one of the early ones to start talking about it.
Oh, I don't think I was that early, to be honest. I followed a bunch of bloggers who've been doing it for years. And so, given that that was the sort of content that I consumed a lot of, to me, it was like, obviously this is a no-brainer. I have to do this. I think with anything, the more people who do a thing, the more normal it becomes. And so basically anyone who's ever lived with me has become an online creator in some capacity, because they see how normal it becomes normalized. When you listen to podcasts that are all about entrepreneurship, you become an entrepreneur. Because when you listen to podcasts where it's interviewing creators, you end up thinking, oh, how hard can it be? I'll start a YouTube channel. So it didn't seem like that big a deal at all. I think I also had a natural predisposition towards not really caring about most things, including like basic privacy. And this concept that, income and money is like some taboo topic that shouldn't be talked about. I always felt that, why is this a thing? And like, why are people cagey about their salaries? Like, it's just money at the end of the day. Like, who cares? So I certainly benefited from a lot of transparency from other people. So I thought, you know what, let's give this a go. And also there's the clickbait value of being able to talk about money, because it gets views.
I guess that also translates to other things. So it's not just money, and maybe it's that mindset that goes into other things. But there are definitely people who don't want to necessarily reveal trade secrets or whatever, or this is how I do it, or put things behind a paywall. What are your thoughts around that? And is that sounds very similar from a mindset point of view of... Yeah,
my philosophy on this is like, give everything away for free. Like, there's no point holding stuff back. It's like, what are you holding it back for? Like, there's nothing we teach on our like, expensive cohort course that people can't learn on the internet. Mostly people are paying for the accountability in the community and the cohort aspect of it, rather than the kind of secret source content. Like, it literally says on the landing page that there is no secret source. It's consistency for 2 years, which like no one does.
One of the other things I remember you saying, and I can't remember where, but is like, opportunities come up from a financial point of view, but you don't necessarily take them if they're like small opportunities. It's like, it's not worth doing it if you're only going to make like a few pounds or something, or equivalent of it. What is your mindset around that, and why? Yeah,
I think it's just about opportunity cost. As you make more money, and as a business gets bigger, it stops caring about certain other things. There was a great tweet that said, there are multiple $1 million businesses waiting to be started that people with $100 million businesses know is a problem, but they just can't be bothered to do it because it's not worth it for them. And I think that's very much the case for us. Like, this sounds crass, but like, I wouldn't be interested in a business opportunity unless it made about 100K a month. Like, that's the sort of ballpark that I'm now thinking. And so if there's an opportunity to, I don't know, work with a company that maybe going to make 10K a month, I'd be like, probably not worth it. If it's going to make 50K a month, I'd probably think about it. So like, the scale for this obviously changes over time. At the start of my YouTube journey, it's like, someone's offering me £5 to do something. Hell yeah, I'll take 2.
So it definitely shifts over time. Yeah, because I think there's a very split view on this from the people that I've spoken to. Some are like, start a membership club, or put stuff behind a paywall almost from the beginning, because why wouldn't you ask people to pay for something that's something you've spent time creating? And then there's your kind of viewpoint, and shared by many others, of no, why would you do that? And it's very much the Gary V jab right hook kind of vibe. And I think I for one have definitely been pulled in the former direction, but I actually think that your approach is much better. Why would you do that if you're trying to build kind of a brand? Then it makes sense to give more away for free. So when you launched PTYA, how much better do you think it was having that as your first almost paid course or service or whatever, versus if you had stuff behind a paywall before, or if you'd launched it earlier in your kind of career?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons it did very well was because it was the first real right hook that I'd landed, probably in like 3 years of doing the YouTube channel. Because I'd never really asked people for money before. And again, this is something that Tiago and David were saying. They were like, it's much easier to start off with a very expensive product and then make cheaper ones further down the line. It's a lot harder to start with a cheap product and then your audience gets anchored to that pricing. And then you try and release a more expensive one and then people start hating on you for it. So we thought, you know what, as a first proper product, let's go with an expensive cohort and see what happens with a money back guarantee in case it's really bad.
Going into that kind of launch, what was your thought process around it? Because if I remember correctly, I think you were very anxious about how many places you would sell. And how did you kind of get over that to still put the course out?
Yeah, I mean, at the start, I told myself this was just a beta testing cohort, that we were going to get like 10 to 20 students on it and test it out, get loads of real-time feedback, and then think about properly doing it further down the line. We ended up getting about 350 students that time. And so it ended up being like, all right, let's take this seriously from day one. But then each time we've done the cohort since then, I've always been concerned, like, are we going to sell enough seats, that kind of stuff. It's all a bit stupid, really, because even if we sell like 30 seats, we'd still be profitable. So if we sell 330 seats, which is very profitable. So I'm trying to get better at not caring so much about the outcome, but also at the same time, it's like this balance of like not caring about the outcome, but still setting ourselves up for success for the outcome. Yeah.
So yeah, okay. Be prepared, but it's going to be okay if it's not quite what you think.
Yeah, exactly.
So a bit of a shift. Obviously, you went into YouTube thinking, hey, it's going to be a business, and therefore I'm going to treat it like a business, and I want to kind of almost make money from day, not make money from day one, but I know my goal is to make money right from the beginning. Over time, you've also brought in, or not brought in, but you've kind of expanded into things like repurposing, social. You've put a lot of effort and energy into that. How much do you think that has benefited or made an impact on your kind of YouTube channel and things, if at all?
I don't know. I'm always a bit dubious about this. Like, 100K followers on Twitter, 300K on Instagram. Like, what is the? It sort of goes to. The way I think about it is like, what are the things that we're optimizing for? I don't think the Instagram audience is particularly contributing much revenue, for example. But then if we can put it partly this is like a content and education business. And so there are people that will consume our stuff on Instagram and not on YouTube. And there are people that will read Twitter threads and blog posts, but not watch YouTube videos. And there are people that listen to long form podcasts, but not watch YouTube videos. So in a way, expanding across the platforms is an end in itself rather than just a means to an end. Which is the other thing. Like, I guess when I was previously describing YouTube, I was describing it as a marketing vehicle. It is a marketing vehicle, but it's also the end in itself. Like, the reason people email being like, oh my God, your content's changed my life, is because of YouTube videos. It's generally not because of the course they then bought, because of the YouTube videos. So there's the dual purposes of like, I care about the platform in their own right because it's a way of educating people and inspiring people at scale, but I also care about them because they are also marketing drivers for our course sales. But ultimately, the only point of the course sales is to be able to make free content. And if we had unlimited money in the bank, I wouldn't bother with any courses at all. I'd just make loads of free content. So there's like those two things that like symbiotically relate to one another. Coming
back, while we're talking about the YouTube channel, obviously you've gone from when you were starting to eventually having affiliates and, from being monetized to having affiliates and to having sponsorships. What did that journey kind of look like to you, and what were your thoughts as it was happening?
Yeah, I remember the first time I got a sponsorship deal. It was like a year and a bit after I started YouTube, and it was for like several $100s. I was like, "Whoa! I can't believe someone's paying me like $500 to just like plug this thing for like a minute. What the hell? This is like incredible." And so that was my view of sponsors. When the affiliate thing started, I think that started about a year or two. I can't quite remember. Probably a year or two into the YouTube journey, 2 maybe. Where it was like, okay, we've got this 10% affiliate deal with this brand. I think Paperlike was one of our first affiliate deals. And then after a while, I was like, whoa, this is actually making real money. This is making a few $100 a month. Whoa, incredible. And as the numbers get bigger, it's just still like, I'm still flabbergasted when I look at some of our affiliate partnerships and how profitable they are. And the nice thing about an affiliate partnership is that it's like really win-win for both parties. Like, the brand is getting sales and I'm getting like 10, 20, 30% of a cut from that. So it feels really good, and it's also very passive, and I just love passive streams of income. I don't like working for money. I like to do the work up front and then let the money kind of trickle in over time.
Yes, I like that idea. So sponsorships. Yes. How, especially when you were starting, how did you know how to almost price yourself or decide how much to charge sponsors? Were you very much, this is what they've offered, I'm going to take this? Or was it like, hang on, I need to set the bar here?
It was a bit of both. I did a bit of research. I think Tim Ferriss talked about how he got sponsors on his podcast, and he was working at a $30 to $60 CPM, which is cost per 1,000 impressions. And so I was thinking, you know what, let's go $30, which is a bit upmarket for this sort of thing. And I used that to anchor my pricing. Generally, they just said, we have a budget of $500 for this. Take it or leave it. I was like, all right, it's better than nothing. It's a lot of money. That's like freaking a week working as a doctor. So like, I will happily plug Rosetta Stone for a minute to be able to pay the mortgage this month, kind of vibes.
So you've said you went into YouTube obviously wanting to make money and treat it like a business. How do you think that differs from people that are not necessarily going in with that mindset? And do you think, not that that's the wrong mindset, but do you think there's an advantage to going in thinking of it as a business?
I mean, the way that I treated it like a business, like I think it was different than for most people because I already had a business. And so YouTube was a content marketing driver for sales for that main business. And so even if I had like 100 views, if those 100 views were from the right sort of people, i.e. people applying to medical school in the UK, preferably at like Oxford, Cambridge or Imperial or UCL, which were using the BMAT exam for reference, those were the sorts of people I wanted watching the videos. So in that sense, I was treating it like a business. I think most people treat it as the impression I get is treat it as let's try this out, let's see if it works. And they're not massively anal about consistency. The people I know who have succeeded have been anal about consistency. And there are some people that have succeeded despite not being consistent. But I think in general, if you want to take YouTube seriously, you have to be consistent and upload at least once a week because the platform does value quantity. When I think of approaching YouTube as a business, like if I was starting from scratch today and I didn't have a business separately to drive traffic to, I'd be approaching YouTube as a business in that I would be taking it seriously. Like I wouldn't be treating it like a hobby. A hobby is like what I do with my guitar, where I noodle once a week, if that, and like not really care about learning new stuff, not really care about improving. I think treating something like a business is treating it like a professional, taking it more seriously, showing up every week, regardless of how you feel about it.
And then to finish off, I suppose, over the years, what's the kind of biggest learning you've had from a business point of view, I guess, of growing this to where it is now?
It's kind of changed at each different junction. I think when I was a solo person, the biggest takeaway was I need to treat this like a professional and show up every week, regardless of how I feel about it, and do whatever it takes to make that happen. When we got to the point of having a team, at that point, the biggest takeaway was sort of the power of giving people ownership of stuff and delegating things to them, and then trusting that they'll do a good job with it. But then also, the thing that I did and continue to do badly is being clear on what I actually want. Because I think one thing one of my coaches tells me is that basically what I would like to be able to do is to hire someone and be like, all right, Bav, you're hired, go make me some money. Like this is how he describes it. And he says that you can't really do that because if you could clone yourself, the clone of you would be doing their own thing. They wouldn't be working for you. And so when you're hiring people, you do need to give them some level of direction, some level of like, something to work towards, a vision to work towards, all that kind of stuff. Because if I could just hire someone and be like, go make me money, like, why would they work for me? And so I think that's an area in which I continue to be bad at because I just sort of assume that everyone is kind of like me. But I've realized over time that people do like having goals to work towards or like having some idea of what their job involves rather than just make it up as you go along. Like, come on, how hard can this be? Which is how I would approach things like that. So I'd say kind of most of my learnings have been in that sort of front, like how to work with a team. Okay,
that's cool. Right, I think we'll leave it there, Ali. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
In your flat. But no, thank you. This has been wonderful.
Cool. I'm glad. Yeah, thanks for having me on.